Welcome back, everyone. This is the afternoon lecture of week 1, day 2 of web fundamentals. Almost slipped on that one. Web fundamentals. Let's continue on with our day learning about CSS. Right, this morning we had our very first introduction to CSS. We learned how to link our style sheet to our HTML file. We learned about some of the selectors, class versus ID selector. We also worked with the general element selector and the child selectors, right? The descendant selectors, the descendant selector and the direct descendant selector. So we learned about all these selectors. We learned a couple of rules that we could apply in CSS. Now we're going to look at a bit more of some CSS rules and learn about the box model and then also about inline block. Okay, these are really important concepts. Again, we are learning about inline block today, but tomorrow we're going to transition into a new way of doing things using Flex. So we're going to do a vexology lab. We'll explain what this is about. We're going to group up like we did this morning for algos, work on some vexillology, and then we'll present at the end of the day. One more thing I want to mention while I'm here on the calendar and before I start the lecture is that code reviews are now open. So we can look at the bottom of our calendar, click the code review tab. We can enter in our name in the column for the time slot that we want to do our code review and the name of the assignment. So pick an assignment that you feel challenged on so that you can get some critique that will help you on the test that we have coming up on Wednesday. So tomorrow will be a week from the test. So I would, it opens up for Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. So pick a time to make a code review. You have to do a code review in order to be able to take the test. So pick one of these days. I see Richard already signed up. Tuesday, Richard, you just need to enter in your assignment that you're going to do your code review with right here.
Okay, I'll figure that out and fill it out later.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get started. What are we going to review today? The box model. So let's look at some CSS rules before we get into the box model. All right, I am in this part of the platform. Let me just change the font size. Okay. We're going to go over some CSS properties and then transition into the box model. Okay, so let's learn about how we can give some different colors to our HTML elements. So we have different colors and we can name them by their conventional color name that we know them in English as, right? So black, white, red, green, blue. But there's also a red, green, blue color combination that we can assign. And this color combination of red, green, and blue, different numbers here, are going to be what can give different colors as well. So let's create some colors here that we can work with. Let's open up a new Visual Studio Code. So let's go back to here. I'm going to close this folder out. And this index, and this should be in here. Okay, so I'll close this out. And okay. So in this one, I'll say index.html. Let's close out all my files here before we get started. Okay, so here we are, afternoon lecture index.html. I'm going to create an HTML file and let's create an H1. Right, and in this folder, I'm going to create style.css. I'll move this to the right so I can see them both at the same time. And I need to link my CSS. So I need to go into my head of my HTML, link CSS. And let's select the H1 and give it a background color. Background color of red. Okay, and I'm going to right click my HTML file, open with live server. And there is my H1. It's got the background color of red. Now, I said we can also use the RGB color combination. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to transition this from red to this RGB color combo. And we can see it's still red. Okay, we can see it's still red. Now I want to show you guys, whenever you select a color, you can also hover over that red square and then move this circle here to change that RGB color combination. Okay, fun fact, all the pixels on your screen that you're currently using are the color of the pixel is formed by this combination of red, green, and blue. You have a bunch of little pixels on your screen that are different levels of RGB. And so now we can use this RGB to affect the color of this H1, this H1's background. Okay, so this is how we affect the background color of something. Say background color and then the color. Right, we can affect its transparency, and let's see that. So now it's like this pinkish color, and we can change the color as well on this bar. When you are working on an assignment or on your test and you're not sure which color it is that you're supposed to be finding, or that you're not sure what color it is that you're looking at exactly, there's an extension you can get on Google called Color Picker. And so you can use this to hover over any part of your browser and select that color hexadecimal code. All right, so what's hexadecimal code? Hexadecimal code is another way to specify a color, very similar to RGB, but now we have this 6-digit color combination. So let's go ahead and paste that hexadecimal color that I copied from my browser extension, Color Picker. And we can see now background color is green. Right, let's take a poll to see, are we all following around, along with how we can use different color properties? We can use hexadecimal, RGB, as well as named colors here. So you don't have to know the exact name of the color you're going to pick. You can also just say, all right, if I'm looking for this bluish color, let's say blue, you can start with blue and then just go hover over that square, find around the shade of blue that you need. Is it darker? Is it lighter? Is it somewhere in the middle? So you can find that shade of blue you need. You can also use this color picker. Okay, that I just searched color picker, Google extension, Chrome extension. That's where I found this. All right, so no questions? Yeah, let's move along then. And so we already introduced background color versus color. The difference is color affects the font's color and background color affects the background color, right? So I've already affected the background color. Let's make the color itself white of the text, color white. And so now I have white text with a blue background. All right, so moving along, let's look at text properties. Okay, so I already introduced this morning text align center, right? That's how we were able to center align one of the H1s this morning. Now I want to show a couple more text align properties here. So let's take this text align right, and I will apply this to the H1 now and see what happens. Now our text aligns all the way to the right. So if we move it back to center, it'll go to the center. By default, it's already on the left. So we would know what would happen there, right? If we just switched it to left, then we'll go back to the left. And there we are. So we have the text alignment properties. We want to, if we also want to decorate our text, we can also do that with text decoration. Okay, so let's take a look at these. I want to, let's create some P tag. I want to create a P tag here with a lot of text inside so we can see these text decoration properties. So I'm going to target my P tag here. I'm going to say text decoration. And what's the first one we deal with? Underline. Let's look at underline. So this is now underlined text because we used text decoration underline. We can also send a line through the text by saying text decoration line through. So let's do that one. Line through. And now we have lines through the text. Where would we see this used? Maybe on an e-commerce platform, you see certain things sold out, right? So it would be crossed out of the list, sold out, something like that. So we have line through and text decoration none. Text decoration none. Right? Now it goes back to the default view. Seems like it was like this already. But what use can we think of for text decoration none? Can we think of anything where we can apply this to? Where the default is some other type of text decoration? Let's look at an href. Let's look at an href. I want us to see this is a link, right? This is a link to another page. So let's take a look at this. And by default, it looks like it's underlined and it's blue. So if we want this to no longer be a link that's underlined, and let's say we want to make it red, a red link on our page, how would we do that? We can say to all the A tags on the page, text decoration none. And there we go. It's just removed the underline. It's no longer there. So I said we also wanted to make it red. So let's do that. Color red. And there we are. So we will probably be using, the most definitely we'll be using text decoration none to take away the underline that we'll see in a link here, in an href, an anchor tag. Okay, so let's continue. Couple more. We have font styles. We have font styles that we can apply. Right, so let's see how we can do this. let's apply a font style italic to our p tag. Font style italic. And now we can see here our font is italicized. And let's make it back to normal. So back to default. There we are. Let's see all the different font styles that we have available. So if I say colon, italic, normal, oblique, what's oblique? Okay, that's not bad. Kind of looks italic though. So let's just go with no font style right now and see what the next property we can apply. Font weight. We want to increase the weight of our font. So let's change it to bold. Font weight bold to our p tag here. And now we see our font has been boldened. If we wanted to grab a font from an online, like a font that it does not exist. Well, first let's look at the fonts that do exist here. Okay, so let's look at the different font families available to us. This font family here, let's go with font family cursive. So I will apply this to my p tag as well. So let's take away this font weight bold and apply font family cursive. So we can change the font on our page as well. Font family cursive. Let's check out monospace. Monospace. I like this one. Sans serif. Okay, pretty good. And I think this one by default was already serif. Right, so if we comment this out, this one is by default font family serif. All right, so before I move forward, let's take a poll. And for a pulse check. How do we feel about font families, text decoration, font styles, font weights, text alignment? We getting it? Awesome. All right, looks like we're understanding this so far. Now, Fontella's question is, do we need to download new font style to our VS Code? We do not need to download a font. What we need to do is to go to our Google Fonts, and I'll show you where we can do that. So let's go there. Let's go to Google Fonts. And browse some fonts. Oh, I like this one already. This is crazy. So how can we grab this? We have to look here at the different versions of this one here. So we have the regular 400. That seems like the only one available. We can see it at different pixel sizes. So let's grab this one. Wait, hold on a second. We need to. Does this not expand into an area we can grab it? Let me see what's going on here.
You just have to select that the 3 boxes with the plus in the top right.
This one here?
Yeah.
I thought, oh, there it is. Yep. Thank you, Narciso. All right, so we have to import these into our project. So we need to link these into our, there's a couple ways we can do it. So we can take this here And this we add to the, well, actually we take this from the style. So we copy this here and add it to the top of our CSS. And then we can grab this font family from here. And let's see, where did we apply it? We wanted to apply it to the P tag. So let's look at it now. Or did I not do that correctly? Let me see here. So this we import. This we grab. And do we need to get a link from here as well? I think so.
No, it's just one or the other.
Okay. So what's not connecting, Narciso? Could you help me out here?
Yeah, let's check it out.
So we've got the import
Yeah,
from the style. So I
Yep.
copied that in.
yep. And then there's the property, the font family balsamic sans.
Yeah, I've got
Yep,
that.
you put that on
The
P.
P tag. Yep. So if I save it, which it is
There
saved.
it is. Yeah, that's balsamic.
Oh, I was thinking it was going to be like this font here that I'm seeing.
Oh, no, you've chosen balsamic sans.
Oh, okay. I thought it would open up automatically. So balsamic sans. So if I wanted to find this one here that I'm looking at specifically, that's what I was
Yeah.
hoping to get.
I would remove the balsamic. Yep, and then add select the regular 400 of the other.
Oh, I see. I have to remove it. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. I need to play with more Google fonts.
Mhm.
So let's grab it from the import here. Let's grab this here. Take away line 1. Replace that. Then we get this from here. Replace that here. Okay. There we are. There's that obnoxious font. Okay, so that's how we grab fonts from Google Fonts. Thank you again to Narciso. The way to do it, as you saw me learn just now, is you need to first remove the current style that you're selected. All right, so let's select another one. No, that's too much. Oh, this one's good. All right, this is interesting enough. So we need to open up this panel here through those 3 boxes plus the plus sign. Remove the current one that you're working on that's selected. Add the one that you would like by clicking that plus button. Then go to the import. Grab the import from the style one here and then add it to your CSS. So I've just replaced it now. Let's fix that there. And then grab the font family and add it to where you want to see the font applied. Let's take a look at this now, and there we have it. There's our font. Really hard to read, but we've changed it and it's unique. The reason we import is because we don't have these saved by default. These are unique ones. People are building these fonts. And, you know, not every new font is going to be saved to your Visual Studio Code editor, but you can just dig it out. You need to import it and use them this way if we want some unique font styles. Okay, so there's plenty to explore here. This will definitely make your website a lot more interesting than if you didn't change your fonts, right? So we have plenty of font styles to choose from. Okay, so that is wrapping up our CSS properties. There's not much else we're going to talk about. Oh, there is this. We do want to talk about this. There's not only the pixel. We've been using pixel sizes to determine the font size, for example. Like, let's say this P tag, we want a font size of font size of 30 pixels for the font. Okay, we've been using pixels so far to determine font size. We can also use other size properties, values. Okay, we have point, pixel, EM, and percentage. Okay, and you can use this drop-down menu to find the equivalent for each measurement here. So for a 6 PT, they will be equivalent to 8 pixels or 0.5 EM or 50%. And so you have this measurement that you can compare. I would just pick one and get used to it for now. You will probably transition from using pixels as you become a better web developer, but I would say let's just stick to pixels for now and keep it consistent. All right. But if you want to use EM, just keep your property value consistent through your CSS so that you're not using different, like, pixels on one font size, EM on another font size. Let's just keep it one property value at a time for now. Okay, so we have different ways of setting sizes and measurements for fonts and for also blocks of code. We're going to get into blocks in just a minute. Before we do that, there's a couple more things I want to show us here. We have the overflow scroll. Overflow scroll. So what does that mean? All right, so this P tag with all the content that we saw here, it's a lot of content. And then what if I box this content in a div? So I'll say div, and let's move this P tag inside this div. So there it is, inside this div. And the div, I want to control the size of this div, right? Let's control the size of this div by saying div height. Let's make it only 200 pixels tall. And the width, let's make it 200 pixels wide. So there's a lot more content that fits in here in this box, right? 200 pixels by 200 pixels. Let me add a border around this so you guys can see. Border, 2 pixels solid red. Right? So there's that box I created. And this box is encapsulating this P tag. So this div is the parent of this P tag. But because this P tag has a font size that's so big with a particular font family that makes it also really big. And so that's why it doesn't fit in our red box. It's not going to be 200 by 200 pixels. So we can adjust for this by using overflow scroll. So let's copy this and see what it does. Paste it in there, overflow scroll. And when I look at my page now, I can scroll through my red box and all the font that I had previously showing outside of this red box is now stuck inside, and the way to access it is by scrolling. So when it overflows outside of the box and you want it to scroll, you apply the CSS property overflow scroll. Okay, overflow scroll. Okay. And we also can set the background to be a certain picture as well. You can set the background to be a picture. So let's go ahead and copy this And I'm going to copy this into the background of our div. And I need to find a picture. So it already says cherries. Well, that's not, I don't want it to be cherries. I want it to be oranges. Okay, let's just grab some oranges. This is fine. This is what I want the background image to be. So I'll save this. Nope. Save image as. Say oranges. Desktop. Create an images folder. And I'll save it in there. So now I have an images folder here. And there's my orange picture. I have that saved there. I wanted to set that as the background of the div, this div with the text in it. So let's set it as the background for that div. So I need to change this because I don't have a cherries.png. I need to find my oranges.jpg file. So I'll say /images and then enter. So now I have an orange in the background. I need to like expand this a little bit. So let's make this 500 by 500.
Could you make the image match the size of the div?
Yes, I'm gonna work on that now. I just wanted to increase.
Okay, all right, sorry.
You're good, you're good. I just wanted to see if I can get a better view of it. So let's see, instead of fixed center, let's just delete all of this. See what we get. Okay, that's not gonna good. It's not gonna work. Let's remove just these two. Now, I'm not sure that this one will work that well. But let's see here. No, I think this image is so big, it's not going to fit well in a 200 by 200. There's another way to set the image as a background. I think I have to.
You're just trying to make it fit in there?
Yes.
Object fit.
Just at the end here, object fit.
No, it's going to be a separate property.
Oh, okay. Object fit.
Yeah, so either contain or cover, we'll make it fit, but contain will make it resize. Yeah.
No, this is not working either.
What do you're trying to shrink it?
Well, yeah, it's just this image to fit the 200 by 200 background for this 200 by 200 div. There's another way to add a background image for a div, right? Besides this.
Nope. Background image.
That's what I was looking for.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But background itself, it's not letting me fit
background. Yeah, background is the shorthand property for
background image. So it is the same exact property.
Well, background image, you can only specify the image. The background, you could specify the image and much more.
Okay. Let me say, just take a look at this. Yeah, no, well, I think with this one specifically, the image is so big that to make it fit in there neatly is going to take some work.
It's contain, object fit contain. I think that's what you wanted.
Okay.
So no repeat. I think you might have competing values there. Maybe no fixed. Not sure. But contain should make it be contained in its container.
Does it scroll when you scroll in there?
No, the image is fixed.
Okay.
Yeah, the image is fixed. Okay, so let me get back to you on you guys with making an image fit as a background. Yeah, I'm not sure this one is
Try background size.
background size.
Yeah, and then do that contain.
There we go. Thank you, Narciso.
Sure.
Okay, there it is. We should have that on the platform. Background contain. Where were we? Oh, and here we are. No, well, this is the same thing. No repeat, center, background size, auto. Yep. So this background, as Narciso just explained, can contain the URL for the image itself, the no repeat, fixed, and center properties all in one line. The alternative to writing it this way is to say background image for this for the image that you're trying to load, and then background position center, so that would be for center, background size auto, and background repeat, no repeat. Let's try this one. Background size auto. I think this is the one that had worked. Oh no, that's not it. It's contain. It's contain. Okay, so we have background images for divs. We can set that as well. And what else do we have? We have border properties. We have border properties. So we already took a look at this border here. It has a 2-pixel solid red border. We can add dotted borders as well. Look at this 2-pixel dotted green border. So let's change this up. And now our div here has a dotted green border. Okay, so we have a dotted green border. And we can change it back to solid by saying solid, right, instead of dotted. And this is a hexadecimal color code. So instead of just saying green, we have a color code. What do we have here? Let's take a look at this. Groove instead of solid. So let's change from dotted to groove and make it orange. Let's make it a bigger pixel. Let's make it 6 pixels. Groove orange. So there we have groove. Looks like a border frame. Let's make it bigger. And there it is. So there's groove. Let's take a look at the difference between this and solid. Okay, that's solid. And this is dotted. Okay, so we have a couple different border options. There's much more than this as far as borders. You can look up different CSS pre-made borders, apply them. Lots of cool border designs you can add for your divs. So don't hesitate to look up and play with that. And we also have border radius. So let's look at border radius. I'm going to add border radius. And I'm going to make this back to solid. And it's at 5 pixels. So do we notice a difference? Let's increase this. All right, I'm just zooming in a little bit. Border radius at 5 pixels, it's rounded off the corners. Let's increase it to 15. It's even more rounded. 45. 50. Okay, and let's change it to 50%. At 50%, it's a full circle. Okay. So we have a border radius of 50%. That makes it a circle. If my width was wider, for example, if I made this height of 200 and width of 400, then we have an oval. The reason it's a perfect circle is because we have a height and width, which give it a box size. It's a box, so therefore border radius 50% rounds it to be a circle. All right, and so that ends and wraps up our CSS properties. We're going to move on to the box model after this. Let me ask you guys how well we feel about all the properties we've learned thus far. Now I know background size contains got to be that special property. Got to note that. Okay, so moving along, let's go to the box model. All right, this is our box model. And it's important that we understand this. Okay, really important that we understand this box model. What is it? It's a model for how each box that appears on our HTML page looks. So let's take a look at what I mean here. I'm going to switch this back to have a border radius. It's not going to need a border radius. Just comment it out. Oh, no. Wrong line. Here we are. Okay, so here's our box. I'm going to shrink it back to a normal 100% view size. Okay, so this is the regular view. I'm going to inspect this box. And so I right click my browser, I click inspect. And if I drag this over a little bit and drag this bottom end up, we can see that box model right here as well. So I'm going to select this div here. And when I select this div, I can see its respective box model on the bottom right corner on this panel here, the console panel. And when I hover over its margin, it highlights the area that the margin is occupying. When I move my mouse over to border, you see it has 16 on all sizes. That's because I set the border to be 16 pixels. So that's 16 pixels on all sides. So 16 on top, left, bottom, right. So that's the border. All right, so the border is a layer within the margin. And then we have the padding. Padding is not being highlighted right now when you see the view on the left, because there's no padding either. Now the box itself is 200 by 200, right? Because we set the height to be 200 and the width to be 200. So that's why we're seeing this 200 by 200 right here. Right? So that's why we see that there. So what is padding, border, and margin? We need to define these. We've just looked at them as layers as we scrolled over and highlighted them. What these are different aspects of each box that appears on our page. So we'll talk about more what a box is, but when a box appears, here's its model, okay? Here's its model. The margin, let's think of the margin as the lawn area of our house. So if we defined our div to be like a house, all right? So imagine this div is a top-down view of a home property, okay? So we've said the structure itself is going to be 200 by 200, and that's why we're seeing this 200 by 200 box. The margin area, let's imagine this as like a force field around. So we can imagine to the house, it would be like the lawn area around it. Okay, so this is the area that's not exactly attached to the house. We don't see it in its, for example, if we affect the margin right now, let's affect the margin. I'll say margin 40 pixels. Okay. What I've done now by adding 40 pixels to all sides is say add a force field of like 40 pixels to the top, left, bottom, and right. And this area we can think of as the area surrounding the property, right? Like the grass, the lawn. The border is the fence. So we have a pretty thick fence. It's 16 pixels wide. So think of the border as like a fence. And the padding is the space inside the house. Think of our house being an inflatable house. Okay, think of our house being an inflatable house, like not like the house from Up where it has a balloon, but maybe kind of like that, where we can inflate our house as well. Okay, so as well as giving it dimensions, we can increase the size within and blow it up. So let's go ahead and do that. Well, some houses can be inflatable, like the jumping houses, right? So let's say padding 60 pixels. Add a padding of 60 pixels. So when I add a padding of 60 pixels, you can see it already blew up a little bit more. So the padding, see that green area that's highlighted when I highlight with my mouse, on the padding here, that green area is the 60 pixels that I inflated from the inside. Okay, so when I inflate it from the inside, the whole box gets bigger. Right? It's still a 200 by 200 pixel box. It's still just that size, but I've inflated it 60 pixels all around. And that's why that box got that much bigger. Let's take away the padding for a little bit just to see the difference. So without padding, it goes back to 200 by 200, padding 60 pixels. I inflated it by 60 pixels on all ends within. The margin is that force field around. So the margin, if I take away 40 pixels there, it goes back to the edge, back to its default place. Add 40 pixel margin, and it moves over from the top, from the left, and from the bottom. Okay, so I've affected the margin, and I can also affect the border, right? So I can increase the border size, decrease it. You saw me do this already. So thin border, 6 pixels. And so what I want us to grasp is the difference between margin, border, and padding, and the size of the box itself. Right? The size of the box itself is set by the width and height in this scenario. I've increased the size on the inside by padding. The border is the thickness of the fence around it, and the margin, I said, was the force field around. So I want us to give me some feedback on how well we understand so far the difference between margin, border, and padding. Difference between margin, border, and padding. Okay, so looking good so far. Now, there's a couple more things to applying padding or margin. The way I've applied padding right now is by adding one number to the margin. So for margin, I've said 40 pixels. So that adds 40 pixels all around on all sides. So if I say 70, that adds that 70 on all sides. But there's a way to add margin or padding or border to only one side. We can add it exclusively to only one side. So let's take away the padding for now. Let's see what it looks like without the padding. All right, when I add padding 60 pixels, again, let's hover over the box. 60 pixel padding is that green space all within the box. All right, so if I take that away, it's going to disappear. And now I want to only add padding to the bottom. How can I do that? The way I do that was, first way I'll show you is by saying padding bottom 60 pixels. So this will only add a padding of 60 pixels to the bottom. And you can see that on the box model here. 60 is only on the bottom. And when I hover over it, there's only that green highlighted area on my, let's see if I can do this. This here is where the padding area is being applied. So if I hover over, no, it's not going to let me. There it is. Okay, so we can add it exclusively to the bottom by saying padding dash bottom or padding dot dash top. That will add exclusively to the top. We can add it exclusively to the left or right. So you'll say padding left. That's what it looks like to the left and to the right. All right, let's take away the margin and just add a margin to the left now. Margin left, 50 pixels. So I can affect that margin area by saying 50 pixels to the left, and it looks like it pushes the box to the right because we're adding a force field to the left. And we can see that reflected on our box model here on the terminal or the console area. Okay. All right. So there's another way we can add padding to the top left, bottom right with different dimensions. Let's look at this here. Padding. I'm going to comment this rule out and add it below. Padding 25 pixels, 50 pixels, 75 pixels, 100 pixels. So when you're reading this, read it like a clock, starting from the top. Top, right, bottom, left. Top, right, bottom, left. So the first one is affecting, there it is. So the first one is affecting margin or padding top, sorry. Padding top, 25 pixels. Padding right, 50 pixels. Padding bottom, 75 pixels. Padding left, 100 pixels. So we're reading this from left to right, thinking of a clock starting at 12 and then 3 and then 6 and then 9. Okay, top, right, left. Top, right, bottom, left. Okay, so we can affect the individual padding or margin or even border. We can affect the border just to be on one side. So let's eliminate this border. We'll say border on the top. I want it to be 50. No, not 50. That's the lot. 5 pixels. On the right hand side, I want it to be 20 pixels. On the bottom, I want it to be 15 pixels. And on the left, I want it to be a big border. Oh, no, I can't do it that way. Actually, hold on a second. Is this affecting the border that way? No, it's not. We cannot affect the border this way. So this here, this top, these top right, bottom left can only be applied like this to the margin or the padding. Okay. Only apply it to the margin or padding. If we wanted to apply exclusive border, we would say border top 15 pixels, solid orange. And there's our border top, border right, 30 pixels, solid red. We can affect different borders that way. Okay. So far, so good. You guys still with me? All right, cool. All right, so that's the box model. That's the box model. So we can affect the different properties of the box, the padding, the margin, the border. And so I want us to take a look at this part here of the box model. When we apply margin to boxes, we might expect that when we have 3 boxes stacked one on top of another, and we're adding margin to each box, if we added, for example, 20 to the top box and 30 to the bottom box, or to the middle box, and 40 to the bottom box, we might expect it to look like this, because when we apply margin 20 pixels, we're saying to all sides, apply 20 pixels. To box 2, margin to all sides, apply 30 pixels. In box 3, margin, apply 40 pixels. But it doesn't actually work this way. What you'll actually see is it looking like this. Okay. And the reason is because only the margin of the element with the largest margin value will be honored. When you have 2 divs connecting, as you see here, only the margin with the element with the largest, only the margin with of the element with the largest margin value will be honored. So that's why this bottom margin of this box at the top, its value is not honored because it's connected to another box with a larger margin value. So it gets swallowed up by the one with the larger value. And that's why they stack this way instead of stacking this way. So keep that in mind when working with margin. And so that will wrap up the box model. Let's look at a practice assignment. This is one of the practice assignments we went over this morning. This is just creating some buttons, adding some styling to it. So we went over what would make this round, right? So what would make this a button round like this? What was a CSS property that could be?
Border radius.
Border radius, perfect. Okay. All right, that's what makes it round. And what about this shadow area here? Does anyone know what makes this shadow area?
I think it's like the box, the border shadow, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So box shadow. So that's what gives it that effect. So I'll let you guys discover that and play with that on your own. Okay. So border radius and box shadow for those buttons. And let's look at now inline and block. Inline and block properties. Okay. So we may have noticed when we were creating our HTML that some of the elements stack on top of one another and some of the other elements do not. Okay, so let's look at some that will and some that will not. So I'm going to create, so this div here, this one that I have with a P tag in it, let's create another div below it. And if I create another div below it, this CSS selector will affect that one as well. So let's make this specific to just this div. Let's give this div, let's call this the orange box. All right, so class equals orange. And so I'll just affect this orange by saying orange here. So now that's the same. And I want to add another div below it. And this div, I'm going to say, this div, let's make it also about the same height and width. So let's say height and width. And a background color of green. Okay, so now I have two boxes here. One is the orange box, and then I have the green one below, right? Each one is its own div. I have the div here with the class orange, and this div here doesn't have anything in it, but we've affected this div by saying background color green. Actually, let's give this one a specific class as well. So we'll say class equals green. We'll call this one the green class, and let's affect this by saying green. Okay, so now we have that here. So we have two boxes, and we notice that they stack one on top of each other. Why is that? Why is it that this div goes right underneath this other div when I create it? But for example, if I create, let's look at this A tag. All right, I'm going to copy this A tag and stick it to this one. We notice that if I write an A tag, let's write a BR up here as well so we can see the differentiation. Okay, so I've put some breaks in to separate the links between the green box here. And it doesn't matter if they're on the same line or not. I'm going to indent this line. The A tags appear on the same line. This is a link and this is another link. They both appear on the same line. So why do these appear on the same row, but others appear stacked in the column? Okay. The way to understand this is by understanding which of the HTML elements have the default block property and which of the HTML elements have the default inline property. Okay. And so we can take a look and inspect using our Chrome inspect tool. So if I click this green box, you'll see that this div, I've selected this div, and it has a display block by default. Display block. Let's look at our orange block. I'm going to click this one, and this one has all the rules I applied to that class orange. But this div, that it's a div, it has display block as its default property. Okay, so we notice that some of them have display block as a default property. Let's look at the links. If I click a link here, it doesn't have that display block, does it? Doesn't have display block. Let's click this link. Doesn't have display block either. Why is that? Well, let's take a look. All right, so we're going to start now looking at the difference between inline and block. Learn how inline and block work. Okay, so inputs, we notice they're on the same line. And whenever anything is by default an inline, it is not going to stack on top of each other in that vertical position. Okay, anything that's inline will stack horizontal, it will line up horizontally. Anything that's a block property is going to stack one on top of another. Okay, if we wanted to make certain blocks for example, this green one, to behave like these links are, where they are in the same line, the same horizontal line, we need to change this green div to be block to inline block. Okay, we need to change it to be inline block in order to be on the same row as its neighbor. Okay, we need to change it to be inline block. So let's take a look at that. Display inline block. So I'm going to copy it from here. And let's take a look. I'm going to apply it to the green here. So I'm going to put display inline block. And what has changed? Not much has changed, but we need to do one more thing before we see a difference. We need to apply it to green and orange. Okay. So when we apply inline block to both green and orange, they will both behave as neighbors. So if we tell them both to become inline blocks, they will stack up next to each other side by side, as you're seeing here. They will be in the same line, just as these links, these anchor tags are in line with one another. Applying display inline block to a block element will make it coexist side by side in the same row as all the other blocks that have inline block within the same container. Okay, so this orange block, this orange div is in the same container as the green one. They're both within the body. So I can say inline block to each one, and they will both appear on the same horizontal line. All right, so I'm going to just repeat myself like a broken record a couple of times so that it makes sense, maybe the 5th or 6th time I say it. All right, so let's take a poll. I want to see how well we're understanding. When we apply inline block to some block elements, if we apply them to the neighbors that we want to be in the same row, they will behave as such. They'll be in the same row. So display inline block on the blocks that we want to see in the same row, as long as they're in the same parent. Okay. All right. So far, so good. Now, there's one more thing I want to show before we close out this lecture. Vertical align top. Vertical align top. We can apply this to inline blocks when we want one of the blocks to align to the top of the container that they're in. So right now, these two here, these green and this orange block, they're within the body, right? This is the body that they're in, but I want the green block to go to the topmost space that it can occupy within the body. So I want this to go upward, right? So I want this to go in this direction. So how do I do that? I apply vertical align top. So let's copy this and put this in the green box. So enter, paste, vertical align top. And so what do we see here? We see it jump to the top just like you've seen happen right now. Okay, so let's see the difference. I'm going to, sorry. When it doesn't have space to both be in the same line, as you saw here happen, they will stack on top of each other if they don't have space to be on the same line. So I'm going to close this panel so that they have that space. I'm going to comment out display inline block so that we can see that difference. So comment. Inline block makes it go in the same row, and vertical line top now. Vertical line top makes it go to the top most space of the container that it can go to. All right, so one last pulse check before we break out. How well do we understand inline block and vertical align top? inline block, and vertical align top. How well do we understand that now? Okay, great. And so we're going to have a moment, so a chance to put this into practice right now. Okay, we're going to put some of this inline block into practice. So let's look at how we're going to do that. We are going to start our lab session. So we've just finished the lecture now, and we are going to break out into groups and work on a project together. So has anyone heard of the word vexillology? Anyone know what that means? Richard does. All right, Richard, what does it mean?
It's got something to do with like country flags or something. I know there's a subreddit that I see every once in a while on the front page.
Okay. So what does vexillology mean? Vexillology is the
study
study
flags.
the study of flags, right? So we're going to study some flags right now. Let's take a look at some flags. Let's look at the French flag. Okay, the French flag here. Ooh, that doesn't look good. My internet cut out? Oh, no, I'm still here. No, let's refresh this page. It's because I'm on Yahoo. Oh my gosh, how did I get here? French flag. Yahoo just changes my default browser preference from time to time. Okay, so here we are. Here's a French flag. How would we build this on an HTML page? How could we build this on an HTML page?
You can wrap them in divs and you can like give each one maybe their own p tag with the, or in a class with like a class.
Yeah, so we would have, let's think of this as divs, right? So we have a blue div, a white div, and a red div. And so we can set the height and width of each div, and we can set the background color as well. And how would we make them go side by side like this? How could we make a blue, white, and red div go side by side?
Inline blocking.
There we go, inline block. So that's what I want us to practice, right? I want us to practice inline block in our groups. I want us to pick a flag that we want to present at the end. So don't pick an easy one, right? This is pretty easy. I want us to push ourselves to be better developers. So pick a flag and use inline block. Don't do this flag. That's surrender. Don't just show me this white page, you know, this is it. No, don't do that either. Okay. Pick a flag. If you feel like you're going to have a hard time, start with an easy one. But if you finish that, then you have to move on to another one. Okay. So kind of figure out a country flag. It doesn't have to be a country either. You can make it flag of a, you know, whatever flag you like. Okay. We're going to present these flags at the end of class. So we're going to group up for an hour and go ahead and do that. Does anyone have any questions before we split up into groups? Nope. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and do it. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. I'll stop the recording. Okay.